Good morning, good evening. Whenever you're watching this, I hope you've had a good week or weekend. Welcome back for another YouTube video on IELTS Academic Task 1. This video will show you the biggest mistake that IELTS candidates and, to be honest, teachers make when dealing with Task 1 Academic. So make sure that you watch all the way through. We will go through that mistake very quickly at the beginning, and then I will show you how doing things correctly will affect the entire text. It's also going to show you how to use some complex grammar in Task 1. Now, all of these videos cover that, and I hope you go back and take a look at some of the other videos I've made. They will give you all of that. And please remember, repetition is important, so watch the video carefully, practice these things. If you've got the test tomorrow, this will hopefully help you a little bit, but really if you've got a few weeks or a few months to internalize this information, you'll do well. Let's just start. Have a look. This is our task for the day. This is from IELTS 8. Go ahead. The first thing I'll say, the big mistake that people make is they don't take the time to analyze and plan their response. The first piece of advice I would give you is to take 5 minutes and look at the data. You'll understand why. Sometimes it takes time looking at these to really understand what's happening. So let's just read it together. The graph below shows the quantities of goods transported in the UK between 1974 and 2002 by 4 different modes of transport. All right, go ahead. I want you to take 5 minutes. I want you to pause the video and watch. No, sorry, don't watch, analyze. You've got 5 minutes, analyze, go. All right, welcome back. I hope you did in fact pause it and look at it. We're going to talk about a few things that I've seen here. Now, first of all, I just want to say before we get into it, these are the main tips I would give you. When analyzing, I want you to look for the trends and the data. You need to have both of those in order to execute Task 1 correctly. So, don't just look for things that go up and down. Look for more than that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. My advice, take 5 minutes to do this, at least when you're practicing. If you take 5 minutes to analyze, you will find that 15 minutes to write Task 1 is a ton of time. You could probably finish writing it in less than 10 minutes if you know what's happening in the task. This is not easy. This is not an easy part of the test. It's a beautiful part of the test because if your written English isn't very accurate or complex, you can still do really well. So take that time to analyze, and more importantly, take time to get good at analyzing. Look for small numbers that show big growth. Ooh, what does that mean? I'll talk about that shortly. Also, do not try to show off your vocabulary. That means don't spend time memorizing, increased significantly, shot up, plummeted. If you use those incorrectly, it just looks bad. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with keeping it simple. And you'll find that the more you focus on analyzing, the less you need to worry about vocab. Remember, the point is, not all the special vocab you know, but might not be able to control, but your ability to express clear ideas. Finally, I will also say don't waste your time with these phrases which are very popular. For example, as can be seen in the graph, or clearly the graph indicates. Now, just to be clear, it's not wrong to use it, but I have 2 problems with it. The first is that you're spending time memorizing language that doesn't actually help you do anything. If you include this or not, it shouldn't make a big impact if you're trying to get a high score. Now, if I'm teaching someone to get a 5, yeah, maybe I'll do this. If I'm teaching someone to get a 7, I do not waste my time. The other problem is it's really teaching you that language is just this, cheap little trick, you know, like learning English is just about memorizing these cute little phrases. And yes, you want to memorize some phrases, but this says nothing really important, so forget about it. Just to point that out, what helps you get a 5 probably won't help you get a 7. The 7 is looking for higher level skills. All right, so here's my notes. Now, I hope you've taken the time to watch the video. The first thing I noticed here was that all of them ended higher by 2002. So what I like to do is really think about the gross increase. So how much did it increase altogether? So if we look at 1974, the total millions of tons was 155. And then if you look at 2002, it was 230. All right, so that's nearly 40% growth. That's huge. All right, it went from 155 to 230. Watch out for that. In these line graphs, people do not pick up on that. A lot of teachers do not teach that. But that's a major, major point to look at. The gross increase, the total increase of all four. So watch out for that. The easy one that people will probably get is that the road is consistently the highest. Also, recently I had some students do this one, and a lot of them used fluctuate. I don't like using the word fluctuate. This is consistent growth. I mean, it dropped a little bit here, but maybe consistent isn't the best word, but overall, between the 18 years here, it increased. So I would say it just grows consistently, or it's consistently the highest at least. And it starts at 70, goes to 100. And that's pretty good. Now here's one of the key things that a lot of people get wrong. The pipeline. Everyone thinks, oh yeah, pipeline, it's small, it's never bigger than anything, doesn't matter. But it shows the most growth. So it goes from 5 to 20. That's 400% growth. That is huge. That is massive. So I understand that it's low, but it grows the most. So pay attention to that. That's really important. If you look at this one grew, it grew a good amount, like that's pretty good, 50% growth, more around 50%. But this is huge. It increased fourfold, all right? It quadrupled. Let's just use that word. Quadrupled. All right, like anything, 4x, all right? That's really important. And then the other two, yeah, water grows 40 to 65, that's fine. Rail falls but grows again and it stays around 40. So not super important, but worth mentioning. Also, I did notice here with water and rail that they kind of switch places, but I just don't really think it's that important. All right. Now, let's take a look at how I've put it together. I have basically copied that sentence. Now, the reason is if you're going to spend 2 minutes paraphrasing, that is a waste of time. I just copy it and then I write more than 500 words. Then I get my overall trend. Over the 18-year period, or if you want to write overall, the amount of goods transported grew by roughly 35%, which I believe I've now changed to 40%. And you could add a word like aggregate or gross amount. And road was consistently the main means of transport. So I've got the total growth, and I've got road being the consistent main means of transport. Road shows a clear and strong upward trend. So I didn't use the word consistent, but over the 18 years, it's clearly increasing and it's pretty strong. Then, comma, and my participle clause, starting at roughly 70 million tons, and then this is really nice, despite 2 minor drops, finishes in 2002 at nearly 100 million. So again, it's a nice way to say that. Like I say, yes, there's 2 drops, but they're minor, and I use that, point despite these 2 drops, it grows to 100 million. Comma again, showing nearly 50% growth from its original position. So there you go. Let's make that roughly. I think nearly implies that it's a little under. Roughly 50% growth from its original position. So it went from 70 to 100. So that's half of that would be 35. So that's nearly 50% growth. Water also shows upward growth. Good. Rising, comma, ing. And again, this is beautiful. I love this because look, same grammar, but different word. So it looks different. It doesn't look repetitive. Rising from just under 40 million tons before plateauing in the 1980s. After dropping slightly, it showed sharp growth, finishing in 2002 at roughly 65 million. So you see I've used this word roughly a couple of times. And, don't worry if you use a word. I mean, it's not ideal. You could say nearly, approximately, about. All of these are fine. I wouldn't worry too much about repeating it. But, obviously try to show some range. Then, conversely, rail showed poor growth. After starting at just over 40 million tons, started dropping. After starting at that amount, started dropping, comma, falling. So again, I've done it 3 times here, showing rising and falling. Falling to a low of nearly 25 million around 1995. Right, so it drops down here to about 25 in 1995, at which point it began to recover, rising. These are pretty long sentences, which I have to point out is uncharacteristic. Another thing you could do is you could change this to be a full stop, capital, at this point. It began to recover, rising to over 40 million again. At this point, do we want to say they switched spots? I don't really think it's that important. If one of these started a lot higher or the other a lot lower and there was a bigger gap, then I might point it out. I just don't think it's as important here, but you could say it. Pipeline also showed clear and strong upward growth. And again, we've got the trend. You don't have to write this. And then I've supported it with data, starting at roughly 5 million and growing consistently until it reached 20 million around 1995. So I've got the data. Always important. Please don't write data in your text. And again, I've done the same thing here, at this point or at which point. So just remember, period, at this, comma, at which point it plateaued. Despite consistently being the least common form of transport, it showed the most growth. All right, so this is one of the things that a lot of people just don't do in the test. They ignore. They just think that, oh, it's small and it's unimportant. But it grew a lot. That's 400% growth compared to 50%, which road showed. So that's pretty important. If you're an investor, if you're an economist, this is the most important part. All right? So this is just one of the big problems I see in IELTS is that people don't really analyze the data carefully, or they just describe it without really thinking about it. And you could even maybe go ahead and say, although it was only 1/5 the amount of goods transported by road, it still showed the most growth. So that's fine as well. You could add that point of comparison, 1/5 the amount compared to road. But to be honest, I would just leave that out because you're comparing it to everything. So this is the one thing that is almost in every line or every bar chart. Something grows a lot, nobody talks about it. And that's about 183 words. You can easily do that in 15 minutes. Not a problem at all. But if you don't, all we're looking at here is how to use the more complex forms of grammar and how to analyze and show your trend followed by the data. Anyway, I think we'll just keep that a nice short video for you today. We do have some longer videos that give a bit more detail on this channel. Go take a look at them. They will follow a similar philosophy, and you'll see more examples of using expressions like despite, as well as the comma and participle clause. All right, I hope you enjoyed that. Please feel free to leave comments or questions and subscribe, as I'll be putting these videos out weekly for the next little while. All right, have yourselves a great week.